Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and I'm excited to be here with Christopher Melcher, attorney at law. Thank you for being here again, Christopher.
Well, thanks for having me, Andy. This is really interesting stuff we're going to be talking about.
Indeed. I mean, this is not good news. I remember Alec Baldwin sort of being pretty cocky in the beginning of all this, saying, talk to the family, and, I don't see any problems. I don't see any worries. He's got to be more worried than ever right now, the fact that the family of Halyna Hutchins has now made a wrongful death suit in civil case against him. And not only are they doing that and they're going after him, they've created a full CGI recreation. I know you haven't had a chance to watch. We're going to watch sort of these parts of this press conference with this lawyer, but this is a big deal, right? And this lawyer is a big deal too, right, Christopher? Is this bad news for Alec Baldwin?
Well, yeah. So Brian Panish is got to be the top, or one of the handful of top personal injury lawyers in the country, based in Los Angeles. Very successful, huge amount of resources at his disposal. And so this is the real deal. This is somebody who has put on cases and won them, much more larger and complicated than this one. So he is going to be successful with this thing. And Alec's story just doesn't hold water over time. And I'm glad that they're coming out with some, visual representation of what apparently happened inside that church.
And it's frustrating because, look, I remember when this started, I was trying to hear it all sides. It was the more Alec Baldwin kept talking and constantly needing to defend himself and try to take zero accountability. And he even said, I have no remorse. It's just too much. Where I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Just shut up, stay out of it, be quiet, let them do the investigation. And it probably would have been better for him. But what's really interesting is in this recreation, which I want to go through and go through parts of it, they quote him. They pull quotes from that, George Stephanopoulos interview and stuff. So all of it coming back to bite him. But as we go, all right, so let's talk through this. You can comment as we go. The lawyer will comment through some of it. I'm just showing you the impact. This is all CG, so it shouldn't make a difference here. This isn't the actual footage here. It's a recreation made by the lawyers, and this has to be pretty expensive to pull this off, pull these things. Is this common for lawyers to go this far in depth with a CGI recreation like this, Christopher?
Well, it absolutely is. And the company who made that, it's got the watermark there, DK Global, and you can look on their site to see what they do. This is
sorry. Yeah, that we're going to come back. They're going to go into more detail, but yes, that was jarring. That was the moment there we did it. But this DK Global does a lot of this recreations, is what you're saying.
Well, it's important in a personal injury lawsuit. We have the injured plaintiff, or maybe it's the deceased person whose now family is going and making a claim and trying to explain what happened. And you got to imagine, if you're at a jury trial 2 or 3 years after the incident, you're the lawyer, you're trying to convey what happened, and just with words, you're never going to have the impact of what that scene looked like, where everybody was standing, how it evolved, what happened afterwards, the suffering that occurred. And that's why they do it graphically. And the defense team is going to fight to keep this thing out. Every little piece of this, and this isn't offered into evidence in the moment, but every single scene of this, they're going to say, look, that pew is not as far away from that other pew. That's not where that person was standing. And so they're going to micro every detail of it. And DK Global and Panish will get this straight over time, because they'll make sure they've got every little thing detailed down exactly right, because otherwise it would be misleading to the jury to present what appears to be a recreation of something that happened, unless it's actually what happened.
Right, and they're calling it factual allegations, is a clever way to, because it's all based on what they're hearing with the facts of everybody's sort of combined stories, photos. They don't have apparently video of it happening, but they're able to sort of, this is based on what everything is going there. So we saw the hit, and then they go through and talk. He sets a whole scene about the previous discharges, and this was a set in chaos. He's painting this picture as he go through. The crew had warned the production that it was super unsafe. Safety was an issue. He goes through a bunch of emails that we've seen a lot of this already but he's painting the picture after he shows that of all the accidental explosives and things, no safety meetings. The workers had complained and quit in protest, which we've been hearing multiple stories of. It was a pay thing, but now this lawyer's saying it was a safety thing. Mr. Baldwin and the crew were committed major breaches of industry safety protocols, and then they go into more detail as they go through the moment itself of here's like,
is used to confirm where to locate and angle the camera.
So this is the
standards require Mr. Baldwin to use a replica or rubber prop gun whenever possible. It was unnecessary for Mr. Baldwin to use a revolver for the lineup. Industry standards require Mr. Baldwin, as a producer and lead actor, to accept the revolver directly from or in the presence of the production's armorer. Mr. Baldwin did not accept the revolver from the armorer. The armorer was not even in the same room. Mr. Baldwin allowed Mr. Halls, the first assistant director, to confirm for him the deadly weapon was safe. Mr. Halls was not qualified in weapons safety. Mr. Halls did not look at every round in the revolver's cylinder. Industry standards require that Mr. Baldwin personally perform or observe a visual inspection of the revolver to confirm it contained no live rounds.
Now that's a massive one, right? And we talked about that when we had our actor friend in here, and he said, look, he didn't follow the safety protocols, and so that's going to be a huge thing here. That's going to affect him in a criminal case and in these civil cases if this is all true. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many rules of gun safety, and they violated every single one of them on this. That's why it happened. If they would have observed one of the rules of gun safety, the incident would not have happened. And that's why Alec Baldwin, it's so frustrating to listen to, especially his later comments after he's had time to be educated on gun safety and what the industry standards are. It's foolish for him to say, like, oh, this is done all the time and there's been, millions of guns used on sets and no one's ever been hurt. Well, the reason why no one is typically hurt is because they actually follow rules of gun safety. And here they didn't do that. And at this point in time, he should be, if he's going to say anything, acknowledging, yeah, I totally screwed this up.
Yeah, I mean, they go in further,
take responsibility, or just not say anything at all. But don't pretend
to play victim
like nothing happened.
Yeah, exactly.
According to him, it's nobody's fault, right? I mean, nobody did anything wrong.
From? That's who we should. Right. It's always where'd the round, which is a fair question. Where did it come from? That's fine, but there are protocols in case that happens that you could have followed to avoid this. It's what I think most people seem to want to ignore when they're defending him. But here they go through and industry required him to be trained and qualified before accepting it. So he didn't do it. He sat there with it. He didn't look at it. According to all the witnesses that were there, he then lifts it up. And then they use his own interview against him here, which was, I found...
Any person or object
wait, hold on.
at which he points a firearm could be destroyed.
So these were all the people that were there in that moment, allegedly.
Mr. Baldwin aimed the revolver at his cast and crew within a dangerous distance. The cast and crew were only 4 feet away from Mr. Baldwin's weapon. Industry standards required Mr. Baldwin to ensure any crew in the line of fire had protective glass or other personal protective equipment.
Because it's important to remember, this isn't even a
remote
rubber
operation
gun.
of the camera.
It's a real
if
gun.
Mr. Baldwin ever aimed the gun at the camera.
So they're not alleging he's on the trigger, which is correct. And here they really get in detail. This is fascinating because I hadn't actually seen it this clearly, but there's the difference between the dummy and the live round. There's a drilled hole and there's a BB in it. So you can clearly see the holes. Everyone says it's impossible, but this is what it would have looked like. And there would have been a BB that you would have shaken and heard versus the other one has gunpowder.
You hear a BB rattle. When you shake a live bullet, you do not hear anything.
So it's something that easily would have been checkable had they had a professional there to do it as it was handed off. And here they're using Alec's own words against him.
And I start to cock the gun. I'm not going to pull the trigger. I listen to you, says, "Well, just cheat it down and tilt it down a little bit like that." And I cock the gun. I go, "Can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see that?" He says, and then I let go of the hammer of the gun. The gun goes off. I let go of the hammer of the gun. The gun goes off.
And we've gone through this, Christopher, but here's the clip from CNN. They used that as well. This is an excerpt.
Acts that were required.
We've shown this.
He had to cock the gun and he had to press the trigger. If he had his finger on the trigger, here and he's pressing it, he may not be aware that he's pressed the trigger. Then he pulls the hammer back, and then releases it, and then the gun fires.
So all of this, clearly, again, his interview, everything he's sort of saying, all of this is coming out, all of this is incredibly damning, and really not making Alec look like he's not. And now this gets a little bit more graphic, so I don't want to show this to the audience, but Christopher, you can see it. They even go and show where it enters. They do it in slow-mo, sort of as it went through organs, and then how it hits out through her to Joel. I mean, it's just sad. It's so tragic to watch this. Thank God he's okay. I mean, he almost took out 2 people with one shot just because that's how dangerous this can be. Yeah, and then we see them consoling as this wraps up. They did a lot more questions and do it, but this is damning, man. And I understand this is part of the performance for the lawyers in a way, right? Because it's not exactly, the thing they're going to try to do it, but there feels like there's enough here or there. And I'm just like, I don't know how does Alec, what does he do now? How does Alec get away from this? What's his plan, you think?
Well, so his first concern really should be on the criminal side, because I view this as manslaughter, that this is, he did not act with due regard or circumspection, they call it. So he didn't act with a reasonable degree of safety when handling a deadly weapon. So I think this is manslaughter. I know that the prosecution and sheriff is still doing their investigation. They've been very careful about that. And things take time, and they have time. They don't need to run into court, immediately charge somebody. They only have to do that within the statute of limitations or the deadline, which is going to be at least a year, potentially 3 years. I don't know exactly which one it is in New Mexico, but they got at least a year from the date of the incident to charge him. So they have time on their side. They're going to gather all this information, and I would expect that Panish's office, for the family, would be sharing information with the prosecution. So they're going to work somewhat in tandem on it. So his first concern should be about being criminally prosecuted, which I think is appropriate and indicated here.
Do you think that's likely?
It's hard to know, like, for me to put odds on it, but because ultimately it's up to the prosecutor whether to charge. Even if a crime's been committed, the prosecutor has to have a good faith belief that they can secure a prosecution. So that'll be up to the DA in New Mexico. But to me, based on what I've seen here, certainly I think manslaughter occurred, and he should be charged because, we have somebody who died and somebody who was injured. So there needs to be accountability for that. On the financial side, there's going to be insurance policies covering this production that are going to provide at least some money that would go towards a settlement or verdict. And then if the verdict exceeds the policy amounts, which I imagine it would, then Alec and everyone else involved in the production of the film is going to have to either kick in money or go bankrupt, or we'll see how that plays out.
The biggest thing I always hear is people saying, well, yeah, but this was an accident. He didn't mean to do it. That doesn't mean you still can't get charged with manslaughter, correct?
Well, that's it. So manslaughter is the accidental killing of another human being when performing a deadly act or using a deadly weapon in a way that's not safe or reasonable. So by definition, it's an accident. But an accident doesn't mean that you're free of responsibility or blame. I mean, if he had acted carefully, like I say, there's probably 5 rules of gun safety. He violated every single one of them. Had he not put his finger on the trigger, the gun would not have gone off. Guns don't go off by themselves, as he apparently thinks. And if you hand somebody a gun, or you handle a gun yourself, and if you're not trained in this, a lot of people's, their finger goes right into their finger guard and on the trigger. It's the first thing I see people do when they pick up a gun, is just because they don't have the training. But we know one of the rules of gun safety is you never put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to fire. So he clearly had his finger on the trigger. He didn't probably think about it, but again, we're not talking a 5-year-old boy here. This is an adult who's handling a weapon in a professional environment with other supposed professionals around him, with all kinds of rules.
Who's done this for years. He should know better.
Done it for years. We have every kind of rule out there. There's publications there that govern that set on gun safety. So this is manslaughter. This is clearly, I think, criminal conduct that he needs to be charged and held accountable for, and he needs to pay the families of the victims, because we have Halyna's gone, and then Joel Sousa has been injured. So they need to be compensated for that.
Yeah, it's frustrating me as we wrap this up. I see a lot of people still keeping this as a political issue because, Alec Baldwin is notorious liberal, making fun of Trump, and people out there defending him, sort of making this a political thing, where it's like, those typically people like that are all about, right, gun safety and doing all this correctly. But Alec made an accident. It's not his fault. No, you got to hold the same standard for everybody. And I think you said it right. It's an accident is still something he needs to be accountable for. And I think he came out pretty well. Like in the beginning, we were on his side. Like he was saying things like, "I'm going to see this through," and he was coming out and speaking in a way that felt like he was going to let this go, where the chips had to fall. But then he got sort of full of himself, or had to do that interview and more stuff that I think really is going to bite him in the butt. And I know for me, made me dislike him more, because I was like, dude, why they haven't even filed their own suits, and you're out there trying to defend yourself to the public? Like, let it all come out before you try to sell us on what happened,
Well, yeah, I liked initially that he came out and talked, because most people, wouldn't say anything on advice of counsel. And I like that he was willing to talk about it, but then he was not willing to understand and be educated about how this incident unfolded and what the rules of gun safety were and how he violated those. And that's where I depart from him. And he needed to, I think, take responsibility, which he's not done. He's instead shifted blame. So I think that certainly we're going to see a lot more of this story, and I'm glad that the family of Halyna Hutchins has got this great law firm representing them, that they're going forward with it. Even if there's no criminal charges, Panish and his firm are not going away. So we'll get justice one way or the other.
Yeah, we'll see, and we'll keep you posted. Make sure you follow Christopher Melcher's channel over on YouTube. Hit the subscribe over there on The Law, and hit the subscribe button here as well. We will keep you updated on this and more. What do you think? Did this visual aid make it even more damning for Alec, in your opinion? Leave your comments down below, and make sure to stay tuned for more here on Popcorn Planet. Thanks you guys so much for watching.